How's it going, ladies and germs? Just a big unit. Uh, I did get around to watching the new episode of Dark Side of the Ring featuring Herb Abrams and the um, reboot of the Universal Wrestling Federation. Not exactly a reboot, but he could use the UWF moniker as Bill Watts of Mid South that became the UWF. Never did copyright that moniker, apparently. And I kind of think with his hope at first, anyway, of competing with Vince McMahon, that, just like back in the day, a lot of promotions, like in the South and everything, Continental wanted to change from CCW, Continental Championship Wrestling, to, I think they went to Continental Wrestling Federation and CWA in Memphis became CWF. They wanted to get that F and that WF federation in there so fans would see that and compare it to the WWF. I think that was a big part of it. Um, but I knew very little, about Herb Abrams and the UWF, and I don't think that I seen any episodes of that back in the day. In fact, I don't even recall the sports channel, unless maybe I remember we had a Prime Sports Northwest, and there was one other a little bit later on, Comcast, back when we had just standard cable and cable boxes before satellite and streaming was prevalent. Um, had a regional sports network, so Comcast Northwest Sports and other regions. I don't even recall the sports channel, and I've noticed some of the footage it says ESPN Classic, so it was obviously aired on ESPN, just like old AWA episodes you'll see with the ESPN Classic logo. I don't even remember that sports channel, unless maybe it was Prime Sports, from the different regions, where I am, Prime Sports Northwest. But I don't think it was. But around 1990, this is around the time of Flair and Steamboat and Flair and Funk, and when Turner bought Jim Crockett Promotions, but it was still part of the NWA. It hadn't split just yet. They were calling it World Championship Wrestling, but it was still the NWA. Um, but that was not as much as like 93, 94, 95, but it was a time when I was a little bit less aware of wrestling. The mid 90s are one of the biggest times when I was not aware. There's only a couple times or so. Another time is like the early or mid, like ruthless aggression era in the WWF. I really wasn't paying any mind to wrestling at that point, but uh, so I wasn't even aware of it. I've seen a little bit on YouTube and stuff, and Herb. Apparently, people didn't know really where Herb got his money or was getting it. Some had an idea. He had clothing stores back in New York, but he had millions. I don't know if this is 5 or 10 or a couple 100 million or more, but I'm thinking it was at least tens of millions because he thought that he could compete with McMahon. He talked to Vince, it said, about letting Vince have the East and the Central U.S. and that he would promote the Western U.S., not compete with, but promote it for Vince. And I'm thinking Vince read through the guy for the kind of character he turned out to be easily enough and wasn't interested. Not that Vince would be interested, even if someone was competent. He doesn't want to do anything like that. He doesn't want to give any control to anyone. Um, but I was just disappointed in the piece, like I thought I would be. The first season to me was a lot better. The Benoit episode 1 and 2. One thing I can say is that they seem to cover it fairly comprehensively, at least. but there's a lot of information out there about it that wasn't all that hard to do. Um, but they did get a lot of the relevant people willing to come and talk, with one or two omissions, the biggest one being Kevin Sullivan, who didn't decline to meet like they said, and just had the one line and kind of made a bad light on Kevin. Um, they didn't follow through, and he wasn't going to meet unless Nancy's parents said that they were comfortable with it, and they just did not pursue it all the way through, so Kevin didn't appear. And I think they were real content with that. I don't think they really wanted Kevin's side in that program, but Kevin has gone and talked with Jim Cornette and posted it, and to give his side, because it left Kevin looking vilified, and so he finally had to answer a little bit. And I feel like they pulled Kevin out and made him have to speak. He's done a great job of being quiet on the matter, um, which seemed like a great thing to do, to just remain quiet in the media out of respect, you know. Um, he wasn't hiding anything, it was out of respect. Uh, but some of season one struck me pretty good, especially the Brody episode. Uh, but I don't like the Vice channel. I think it's maybe the worst channel on satellite and cable, and their politics I can't agree with, and the fact that their channel is just all about their politics. And I think that if season one wasn't, that season two has really become just hit pieces on the wrestling industry. And this one, Herb had money to bring in the big names, and I think that he might have had the skill to book things or get someone to book it and to make the context with the buildings and TV promotion that he needed. But I don't think he was into it really. I think he was just in it for kicks. And it seems like he could have summed up his story in that Herb liked to do cocaine, and when he did that, he liked to party with high priced hookers. I mean, he didn't seem like a streetwise person buying, you know, quote unquote dope on the streets and doing things like that, or um, but he learned how to use coke and whatever else and drink along the way, and someone introduced him to hookers or whatever, and that was something he could do, and get away with, he found in his social circles, I guess. So he spent a ton of money on it and did it to where he lived in paranoia a lot of the time. And you go and look at some of the old clips, even the one pay-per-view they did, and it's obvious that Herb was impaired and acting out and things like that. And it would have been, again, the story, just like in the Snuka episode, there's a story there that I can see covering journalistically with Snuka. Um, but it's been covered, and they didn't have anything new to introduce. They just didn't have anything. And there's not a lot of facts. There's just not a lot there to even base an hour-long program around with Snuka. And Herb Abrams, to me, even less so. It could have been summed up easily. Like I said, Herb Abrams had money. No one really knew exactly where his money came from, but he was a fan and wanted to make it go in wrestling, and his personal demons sabotaged him from the get-go. He had the money, and the big names would come in, and I think the wrestlers knew from the beginning what was going on, but he was able to pay them, so they're willing to come in. And the failure isn't on them because they can't uh, book matches or do much of anything to create and keep the interest of fans and keep them coming in and things. Their job is just in the ring. And so if they could get paid, they were willing to come in, but I don't think they saw a future in it from the beginning. One of the guys was honest enough to say that some of the wrestlers back east and down south and so forth were hearing that there was just a mark out west with quite a bit of money and wanted to start a promotion, and they started to look into it, found out that there's plenty of money there to go around, and I don't think they ever assumed it was going to last very long, much less do any of the lofty goals that Herb talked about, and I'm sure he tried to sell them on. And he even had his first press conference at the Cauliflower Alley Club, like in 90, 91, whatever it was, I guess. And that turned into kind of a WrestleMania press conference or media scrum where Dan Spivey jumped whoever it was, and you know, uh, a hype thing rather than a legitimate conference like people thought it was going to be, especially when you're holding it at the CAC. And that was kind of indicative of Herb, I think, really over the top. His behavior was certainly over the top. You know, um, but I just was disappointed in it again. I really was. And I don't think this piece was really even worth covering outside of just wanting to make a little hit on wrestling, another little hit piece. That's just my feelings on it. And I think maybe there's one more coming in this season. Maybe we'll see if it doesn't improve a little bit. All right, everybody, stay real.